Hello, this is Gary Schnitke, and during this YouTube video, we're going to look at the economics of planting corn versus taking the prevent plant payment. The specific situation we're looking at is we reach June 5th, corn is not planted, and we have RP crop insurance. The RP crop insurance gives us a prevent plant payment after June 5th, the final plant date, and we can take a preventive planting payment from June 5th, June 6th on for the next 20 days. We're in Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana, or most of Illinois. That's the June 5th date. Other areas have different dates, and we have, I'm assuming you have acres eligible for corn prevent plant. I'm going to look at worst case scenarios, those scenarios where corn planting gives us lower returns than prevent plant payment, and then look at the upside. One of the things to note is cash prices have to be over $4.50 in the first week near June 5th, and then go up before corn planting has higher returns than prevent plant payment. That $4.50 price goes up as the APH goes down. So this graph shows the worst case scenarios. We planted corn and now we're getting lower returns than taking the prevent plant payment. This curve is for a 200 bushel APH yield, 85% RP level. I have built in here $40 per acre of MFP payments. I don't know what that number is. Could be higher than that, could be lower than that. If your expectations are for it to be higher, add something to it. If they're lower, if your expectations are 0, subtract 40 from those numbers. And we have a 25-cent basis built in this between futures and cash prices. I'm not including the impact of lower APHs in future years. On June 6th, we have $128 lower from corn planting than taking the prevent plant payment. That happens when yields are exactly at the yield guarantee offered by RP crop insurance, so that'd be in this case roughly 84% of their 200 bushel APH yield, and harvest price equals the projected price, and we got a $3.70 cash price because I have a 25-cent basis built in here. Your basis is lower than or wider than 25 cents, these numbers go down. This goes down in a straight line as our RP guarantee goes down, reaches $2.49 on June 25th, then falls as our RP guarantee after the late planting period goes down to 60%, and then it's down here at minus $400. So that is for 200 bushel APH. Those numbers vary by APH level. Just to give you a feel here, this is what those numbers look like. Minus 95 for a 220 APH, 85% coverage level. They actually get lower as our coverage level goes down. We're assuming worse yields at the 65% level. And you can see what those look like. Again, these are worst case scenarios. This happens to be June 5th. Let's do June 25th, just to get us a feel for what those numbers look like. They're in the $200 to $300 range. Then go to June 26th, and we're all in the minus $300 range. Again, that is how much the return from planting corn is less than from taking the prevent plant payment. So now we're going to deal with the upside, and here is a orange line that shows our net return from prevent plant. Here's a blue line that shows our return from plant corn. Again, this is a 200 bushel APH, 85% coverage level, and 40 MFP payment. Here we have plant corn has higher returns, and I'm using a $4.50 cash price, than taking the prevent plant payment. Roughly on June 7th, June 8th, that crosses, and taking the prevent plant payment becomes a higher return alternative. There's a bit of kink right here, June 10th, and that's roughly where our expected yield from planting goes below our RP guarantee. Here's June 5th, and again, we're all below this. The prevent plant payment falls down because our RP guarantee goes down, and again, we have that kink in there because of what's happening to expected yields relative to our RP guarantee. I'll explain all of our assumptions here in a minute. This is a $4.50 price. Let me take that up to $5. You can see here that pushes things up more, obviously, and June 16th the line crosses, and then let's go to $5.50. We get close to the end of the prevent plant period. This curve here is for a 200 bushel APH. Let's look at some different numbers here. Here are those numbers, and this is for June 6. If we have, and let me jump this down to 450, these numbers give our expected corn return, how much it's higher than our prevent plant payment on June 5th. You can see here at our 220 and 200 bushel APHs, they're all above this. Here's our expected yields we're using for that date and APH level. We get a little bit more marginal at 180 and 160 coverage levels. Let's take that out a bit. That's June 6th. Let's go to June 13th, a week later. Now those numbers are becoming negative. Let's go up to $5. All right, we begin to get positive numbers. In most cases, our lower coverage or APH levels were still a bit marginal. And now let's go another week out to June 20th. So they're all getting pretty close to even or negative. So let's go 550. And we still have some negative numbers here. 550 cash price would be pushing that harvest price up to 575. Now I want to show you some of the assumptions behind those numbers. I'm going to drop this down to 450 cash price, which would be a 475 harvest price. And I'm going to go back to June 6. All right, here are the assumptions we're using. I have a 200 bushel APH yield, $4 projected price this year, and I'm using an 85% coverage level in these options. This is a spreadsheet, so I could change those. Prevent plant payment factor, 5.5 for corn. You could have a 6.6. Then we have yield below APH on June 5th. I'm using 22 and a 3.3 yield decline per day after June 5th. Let me show you how those numbers come into being. Here are yield declines, or how we come up with those. This blue box here, you'll notice I have 81% for June 5th, 75% for June 10th, 55% June 20th, and 45% for June 30th. Those are sort of from Emerson Nafzinger's works and some agronomy journal publications, actually for Iowa, so you got to take that for whether that's applicable to the Eastern Corn Belt. But what this says is on June 5th, I should expect 81% of my maximum yield, 75% on June 10th, and 45% on June 30th. We're doing this for 220, 200, 180, 160. I assumed our max yield was 20 bushel higher than our APH. Assumption on my part, and that gives us these yields on these dates. Then I took June 30th minus June 25th for the 220 bushel APH. That's a 25 bushel decline, 3.6. And I rounded things, and these are the numbers that I've used in those curves that we put in the file, in the worksheet, and that you have been looking at. That's how we're coming up with those yields as we move later into the period. Here's our prevent plant returns, our prevent plant payment, 55% of our coverage level doesn't change. We can declare that anytime between June 5th and our June 25th. So we can make that decision during that point in time. I put in $45 of cost associated with prevent plant payments, and that gives us a net return of $329. Yield, this 174 bushel yield is based on the date of June 6. Cash price $450, harvest price $470. And obviously we can change those. Our crop revenue is cash price times our yield. We calculate our RP insurance payment. We have corn cost of $470, and I put a $40 MFP payment in here. Subtract the corn cost, add the MFP payment, we get $356. And this $27 is the difference between corn returns and prevent plant returns, and that's what's showing up right here. Let me talk a little bit more about these two items. So I'm using $40 for prevent plant cost. That includes a $15 crop insurance premium. Again, enterprise units versus other units will influence that. And $25, I'm assuming you're going to put in some sort of cheap cover crop, $40. $470 of planting cost. You can see my breakdown there, $140. This assumes that you haven't put nitrogen on. If you have put nitrogen on, reduce that number. Still haven't put on your pesticide cost. $115 of seed cost. $30 of drying cost. This is as you move later in this period, that number is going to probably go up. So you might, we didn't build that into this worksheet, but you might want to consider that. Anyway, there you get to $470. You can up that or down those numbers depending on how you think your costs compare to what's shown here. Again, we're using a $40 per payment acre prevent plant, MFP payment. We don't know what that is, and the USDA has chosen not to tell us what that is. Here's the assumptions that we're making, that is going to be a per planted acre number, and it's going to be a standard rate per county. We calculated this using last year's 2018 payment rates and payment acres from 2018. We came up for Illinois that would average of $50 for each Illinois county, with a range from $80 down to $30. You could make the argument that's going to be higher because we have more funds allocated to MFP this year, or that's the press release for it, or you can make an argument that it's lower. Use your judgment here. Again, USDA isn't telling us anything. I put $40 in there just to have something in there. Seems sort of reasonable to me. That's going to be paid in 3 tranches. July, after July 15th, probably early August, November, and January. November and January payments are not assured, and this will reduce the incentives to take preventive planting payment. We had $40 built into those numbers that you've seen here. We're assuming you don't get it for preventive plant, although the secretary did make some statements that it may apply to that. And we're assuming that nothing's happening to the prevent payment factor in this video. We have looked in this video at the take prevent plant payment and per plant corn. There are actually 2 other decisions: plant soybeans or take the 35% prevent plant payment for corn, and then plant soybeans or some other crop after June 25th. We will focus on those 2 items later in the late planting period. Early in the planting period, it probably does come down to number 1, corn prevent plant or take plant corn. Again, we'll deal with some of those later on, and we'll put up some YouTube videos. We haven't talked about the prevent plant provisions. I would refer you to the Farm Bureau broadcast on the basics, and I'll put a link to that in the podcast information. And also go to Farm Doc Daily, and we have a lot more writings on this if you want to look at more. I wish you the best of luck, or well wishes, as you make these prevent plant decisions, and hope that we helped you here in making those decisions.